Hi, my name is John Harrell. This is
John Pasha.
And we're sitting on the stage at the Blackfriars Playhouse in Staunton, Virginia, USA. John and I are both actors in the summer-fall 2008 season.
Right.
We're doing 4 plays this season. I am playing Richard II in Richard II. I am playing Malvolio in Twelfth Night. I am playing Lucio in Measure for Measure. And I am playing the Fool in King Lear.
And I am playing Bolingbroke in Richard II. I am playing Antonio in Twelfth Night. I am playing the Duke in Measure for Measure, and I'm playing Edmund in Lear. But we are here to talk to you about Richard II.
I don't want people to come see this play thinking that they're going to find out anything about contemporary politics from watching it. If they do find out something historically, relevant to their personal circumstance, that's great. I don't think that there's any one answer to how that can be, except to sort of fall back on the old bromide that Shakespeare is the great humanist, and what he writes about is things that all human beings should do.
The idea is that this is the great family drama.
Mm-hmm.
This on the grandest scale. I would say that you're talking about the royal family who have similar things that you might have issues with your brothers and sisters and cousins. They have them with their brothers and sisters and cousins, but they also happen to be ruling a country. I
will say one of the reasons that I think this play is interesting to, and maybe most of Shakespeare's histories are interesting to modern audiences, is because they treat historical events poetically. They show a theatricalized version of conflict, and things that in history books can be fairly dry are pretty interesting on stage. I also think that Richard II is, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about this the other day who's not a Shakespeare person, and he was surprised at how beautiful Richard II was, because he assumed it would be not much more than a history lesson. And I think that its aesthetic relevance is probably stronger than its sort of current events relevance. That would be my
Because there is no historical precedence, the ambiguity of this play is great. No one knows if Richard actually abdicated the throne, or whether or not Bolingbroke, myself, usurped the throne. And I think we actually try to really walk that tightrope pretty tightly in this show, not really giving away which is which, who's doing what, whether or not I'm really coming to take over the crown, or if I'm just coming for my own lands. From my point of view, Bolingbroke comes back to England, says, "Hey, I'm here for what I deserve, which is my land. I think you don't deserve it. You don't deserve, even though you're king, you don't deserve to take away a duke's birthright."
But I think Richard wants to be king, wants to have the crown because he has the crown. And one of the character developments, I think, that plays out over the course of this play is Richard's recognition that there's more to being a king than the ceremony of kingship. And
you have to have people following.
Yeah, you have to have a kingdom, and just having the crown that represents kingship is not enough to be king, and as York, one of the many uncles in this play, explains to Richard, or points out to Richard, the only reason that when he's saying you can't take away Lancaster's stuff is because the only reason Richard is king is due to primogeniture, is due to inheritance from, and so if you take away Henry Bolingbroke's stuff, then you're taking away your own premise for being
Richard
king. Believes he has the right to be king because he believes he has the right to be
he was born. He was born it. His blood is it.
Yeah.
He is nothing if he's not the crown, he is nothing. Isn't that sort of
what
it
he
turns
is?
into?
And not all the water in the rough rude sea can wash the balm from an anointed king. That no matter what happens in this conflict, and I think he sort of clings to this as the play goes on. No matter what happens in this conflict, he is still king. Even when he's stripped down to nothingness in the prison at the end of the play, he still, on some level, is the king as the groom comes in and reminds him. And so,
I find the interesting hypocrisy of that. In the sense of that he can he can take that away from anyone below him. He can take that right away, but no one can take that right away from him. You know, there's a certain amount of hubris, and I think the thing that kind of comes into it is that the rest of the dukes, the rest of are like, well, okay, so basically you're going to dissolve my dukedom the moment you need money to go fight a war. I'm not going to stand by for that. I have been, you know, Henry Bolingbroke has a great line that says, if my cousin king be king of England, it must be granted I am Duke of Lancaster. And he says this to his uncle York. You know, now we're saying this, Uncle York, who happens to be the Duke of York, is both of our uncles, and we are cousins, first cousins. So it's, not only are we doing, you know, the grand scale of, you know, Secretary of State versus, you know, the president or something, but then we're dealing with, you know, siblings, people that grew up together and have done, you know, their entire world is wrapped around each other. So it plays on two different levels.
There cannot be two kings in a kingdom. It is the lesson that Shakespeare returns to with King Lear. There cannot be three, you know, you can't, I mean, he tries to divide it in three, the kingdom in three, he winds up dividing it in two, but you can't do it. It can't last. And it's something that comes up a lot for Shakespeare, I guess, or at least more than once.
Yeah.